Last night's live taping of HardTalk Tonight took an explosive turn when host Dominic Crane launched into an unexpected verbal assault on Mohamed Salah, accusing him of being overhyped and nowhere near legendary. The Liverpool and Egypt icon was clearly invited under false pretenses, and what followed was a tense edge-of-your-seat confrontation that gripped millions across the globe. But what happened next shocked everyone. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because tomorrow we have an exciting story you won't want to miss. The lights burned white-hot on the set of HardTalk Tonight, an infamous late-night commentary show known for its confrontational style and a host who thrived on chaos. Dominic Crane, the silver-haired, sharp-tongued journalist-turned-celebrity interrogator, paced the studio floor with the swagger of a man about to make headlines. Sitting across from him, in the studio's signature leather guest chair, was Mohamed Salah, composed, smiling gently, dressed in a dark navy suit that did nothing to mask the humility in his posture. It was a rare talk show appearance for the Egyptian star, and the audience buzzed with anticipation. Social media was already ablaze with hashtags like Salah on Hard Talk and Moment of Truth. The segment began innocently enough. Crane's opening. Remarks were veiled in charm. "Mohamed," he said, voice oozing with faux warmth, "you've had quite a run, goals, trophies, the adoration of millions. But tonight, let's have a real conversation." Salah nodded. "I'm happy to talk, but—" The tone shifted like a storm front rolling in. Crane leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Let me ask you what others won't. You've been called a legend, a great, even compared to Messi and Ronaldo by some. But isn't that a bit generous? You've never won a Ballon d'Or. Egypt hasn't won a major international title. With you. And let's be honest, Liverpool was built around you, yet you've only delivered one Premier League and one Champions League in over 6 years. Doesn't that make you a little overrated?" There was a pause so heavy it seemed to mute the entire studio. Even the live audience, primed for drama, didn't know how to react. Salah didn't blink. "That's your opinion," he said calmly. Crane pressed on, emboldened by the silence. "My job is to cut through the PR fluff. You're a good player, no doubt. But a legend? Legends carry their nations. They change football. You've had some good seasons. But come on, Mo. Maybe it's time we stop pretending you're something you're not." The audience began to shift in their seats. Salah folded his hands, his composure absolute. "Dominic, I didn't come here for a medal. I came because I thought we'd have an honest conversation. But if you brought me here just to insult me, say it plainly." Crane smiled, predatory. "I brought you here to find the truth, not the brand." The room chilled. Cameras tightened in. Salah, still calm, replied, "Then let's talk about truth." Crane tilted his head. "Go on." "I'm a kid from Nagrig, a small village in Egypt where we didn't always have electricity, let alone football pitches. I've walked miles to train. I've been told I was too small, too weak, not good enough. I've lost finals, missed chances, cried in locker rooms. I'm not here to sell perfection, I'm here because I kept going." Crane smirked, unmoved. "Nice speech, but football isn't a charity case. You're not legendary because you struggled. That's just life." Now a few people in the audience began to murmur. The atmosphere turned uneasy. Salah raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you think legends are? Trophies, headlines, stats on a screen?" Crane shot back. "Well, they help." Salah leaned in slightly, voice lowering. "Then maybe your definition of a legend is the problem." Boom. It landed, like a hammer, but Crane wasn't done. Sensing he was losing control of the narrative, he pushed harder. "Let's get specific. 2018 Champions League final. You leave the pitch early after a shoulder injury. Egypt at the World Cup, knocked out in the group stage. AFCON final. Lost, you call that legendary?" Salah's jaw clenched just slightly. He exhaled through his nose. "I call that life," he said. "I also call that 44 goals in one Premier League season. I call it breaking records for club and country. I call it giving my entire salary from endorsement deals back to my village, to build hospitals and schools. But sure, let's only talk about trophies." There was an audible ooh from the crowd now. Even some of the crew behind the cameras looked surprised, but Crane wasn't done. he interrupted. Let's not veer into philanthropy, we're talking football. You're a global star, yes, but without the silverware to match. Are you honestly comfortable being remembered as someone who fell short when it mattered most? And there it was, the line, the dig, the bait. But Salah didn't bite. Not yet. Instead, he looked directly into the camera for the first time. To every kid watching this, especially the ones from where I'm from, if they tell you you're only worth the trophies you lift, ignore them. You're worth the effort you give. You're worth the fight, the resilience. You're worth every time you get up after you fall. A long silence. Crane broke it, chuckling sarcastically. You really think people are going to remember you for your motivational speeches? Now Salah finally turned, eyes narrowing. There was no smile left, just steel. They'll remember that when the cameras were on, I stood for something. The audience erupted in applause, unscripted and unfiltered. Crane looked caught off guard. He raised a hand to quiet the room, but it only got louder. He tried to pivot, reaching for his notes. Let's not pretend this is a TED Talk. You're here because of your football, and it hasn't been enough to earn you a place next to the greats. Salah stared at him. If your definition of greatness is limited to stats and medals, I feel sorry for you, because I've already won. And not just in football, Crane scoffed. Won what exactly? Salah leaned back. Respect. The audience roared. Again, louder this time. Crane blinked, visibly flustered now. He stammered, well, that's debatable. But before he could finish, Salah leaned forward one last time. You brought me here to break me. But I've survived more than this chair, more than your words. You don't get to define me. And if your only tool is disrespect, don't be surprised when people stop listening. The camera zoomed in as Crane's face fell blank, suddenly stripped of its confidence. The room shifted. It was no longer his stage, but Salah wasn't finished, not quite yet. He looked around, then back at Crane. I came here with respect. But if you can't match that, then maybe I've overstayed. And just like that, the tension shattered into a cliffhanger. Mohamed Salah leaned back in his chair, composed but unflinching. His words had hung in the air like smoke, dense and undeniable, choking the very tone Dominic Crane had built his career on. The studio, once Crane's personal coliseum, now felt hijacked by something he hadn't accounted for. Quiet dignity under fire. Dominic glanced at the control booth, hoping for a cut to commercial, a technical glitch, anything to regain footing. None came. He cleared his throat, gripping his pen so tight his knuckles whitened. So, you're walking out? He asked, trying to inject sarcasm into his voice, but it cracked slightly. Bit dramatic for someone who claims to be all about humility, isn't it? Salah didn't move. If I walk out, it'll be because there's nothing left here worth my time. But for now, I'll give you one more chance to show respect. The crowd murmured again. This wasn't the sound of staged applause or canned reactions. This was live tension, palpable, real, the kind of electricity that makes or breaks reputations in seconds. Crane chuckled, but it came out jagged. Okay, let's reset. Let's talk football. You like stats? Here's one. Since your debut, for Egypt you've played in more than 90 games and still haven't lifted a major international trophy. For Liverpool, sure, 1 Premier League. But that took 30 years before you arrived. 1 Champions League. That's decent. But does decent make you legendary? Salah tilted his head, studying him. Tell me something, he said slowly. Do you ask tennis players if they're legends when they lose a Grand Slam final? Or is it just footballers? Players from Africa, maybe, who have to win everything to be considered great. The air shifted. Crane froze. That's not... No, please, Salah interrupted, his voice calm but rising in strength. Let's talk about what's really being asked here. You've had guests who never won a thing in their careers. You called them iconic, praised their impact, but you bring me here after all I've done and question if I even belong in the conversation. That's not critique, that's disrespect. And worse, it's selective. Now even... The camera operators looked uncomfortable. A few in the audience applauded, tentatively, then louder. Crane waved his hand, trying to regain control. This isn't about nationality or background, it's about standards. If you want to sit at the table with Messi and Ronaldo, you need to... I'm not trying to sit at anyone's table, Salah cut in sharply. I'm building my own. Boom. Another hit. Crane pushed forward, voice raising. You think that attitude is what made Messi great? Ronaldo? They obsessed over greatness. They didn't settle for moral victories or sympathy claps. Salah's gaze hardened. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because people, especially young people, look at my journey and believe they can do something with their own. That's not settling, that's impact, that's leadership. Crane snapped back, that's branding. Salah stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. But the silence in the room was deafening. He stood there, tall and resolute, eyes locked on the host. Dominic, do you think my name matters because of PR? Do you think I sleep at night thinking about whether men like you will call me legend? I've been broken. I've been doubted. So I've carried the hopes of 100 million people on my back every time I wear my country's shirt. And I'll do it again. Because even when we lose, they still chant my name. The crowd now couldn't hold back. Applause thundered through the studio unprompted. Crane tried to speak as anything to cut in, but Salah continued, now turning slightly to the audience. Do you know what it's like to be told you'll never make it? To be rejected because of your size, your accent, your passport? I do. And every time I step onto the pitch, I carry those rejections like fuel. I didn't grow up in luxury. I wasn't handed opportunities. I ran for them. I bled for them. And I succeeded not because the system was built for me, but despite it. The studio had changed. What began as a takedown attempt now felt like a masterclass. Crane scrambled. Okay. But let's not rewrite history. You've lost. You've failed. That's fair to mention. Salah nodded. Of course I've failed. Everyone who's ever done something real has. The difference is, I don't hide from it. I show up. Again and again. He took a step closer to Crane's desk. You wanted to humiliate me tonight. Let's not pretend otherwise. You wanted to clip together a few snide questions, frame me as fragile, and sell it as journalism. But you underestimated one thing. Crane frowned. Which is? My ability to speak for myself. He paused, looking Crane square in the eye. And your inability to listen. Another wave of applause. Crane tried to regain ground. Are you seriously suggesting I haven't been fair? I'm suggesting, Salah said firmly, that you brought me here with the goal of stripping away my dignity on live television, but you can't take what you didn't give, and you don't get to decide my worth. Crane's voice cracked under the weight of the moment. You think walking out now makes you look strong? I think staying any longer would make me look small. With that, Salah reached down, unclipped his mic, and placed it gently on the desk. The gesture was slow, deliberate. Not a flinch of anger, only control. Crane tried one last Hail Mary. Before you go, and just answer me one thing. Do you really think you've done enough to be called a legend? Salah looked at him, then to the camera, then back to Crane. I think I've done more than enough to be remembered. And if legacy means leaving the world better than I found it, then yes, I am a legend. Just maybe not the kind you recognize. He turned without another word and walked off stage. The audience leapt to their feet, erupting into a standing ovation. No script, no cue cards, just raw, earned respect. Dominic Crane sat alone under the studio lights, mouth slightly open, eyes darting, unsure if he'd just witnessed his most viral moment or the slow unraveling of his credibility. And somewhere, millions of viewers were already reaching for their phones, not to praise the host, but to salute the man who had just walked away. Within seconds of Mohamed Salah stepping off the HardTalk Tonight stage, social media detonated into an uncontainable storm. Twitter, or X as it now trended, was consumed with hashtags. Respect Salah, Crane exposed Hayes, legend in real-time clips of the confrontation, particularly the moment Salah said, "You don't get to define me," spread like wildfire. News outlets scrambled to post breaking headlines, YouTubers queued up reaction videos, and public figures across sports and entertainment chimed in. The studio, however, was still frozen in the immediate fallout. Dominic Crane remained seated at his desk, visibly rattled. His script cards were untouched, his mouth slightly parted, hands twitching in search of control. Producers whispered frantically through his earpiece, offering suggestions. Salvage the ending, address the walkout, play it down. But Crane had lost his grip. After a long pause, the host looked into the camera, attempting composure. "Well," he said, his voice thin and hollow. "That was Mohamed Salah." But the words rang empty. There was no applause, no polite laughter, just the dead weight of a moment that had spun wildly out of his hands. He tried to smile, but it came off as brittle. The audience remained seated, arms crossed, heads shaking. A few were already halfway out of their chairs, quietly filing out. Backstage, Salah declined the private car waiting for him. He thanked the show's crew politely, shook a few hands and slipped into a quiet black SUV with his longtime advisor and a small group from his team. No entourage, no dramatic exit. He left the studio as he had entered it, humble, measured, and in control of his own story. By the time the episode officially aired just an hour later, it had already gone viral. Newsrooms dissected every second of the exchange. BBC Sport praised Salah's composure, calling it a masterclass in grace under fire. Al Jazeera described the moment as the day dignity outplayed drama. ESPN FC ran a segment titled, "Why Salah Just Became a Symbol Greater Than Football." Even traditionally conservative outlets found themselves unable to deny the raw authenticity of what they'd just witnessed. And the public? They weren't just watching, they were participating. Countless fans, many from Egypt and across the Arab world, flooded social media with their own stories. Young boys posting pictures of dusty football pitches in rural towns, girls in Liverpool holding up Salah jerseys with pride, African footballers sharing how Salah's rise had inspired their own. The ripple effect wasn't just admiration, it was validation. A generation saw themselves in his resilience. Meanwhile, Crane wasn't just trending, he was being dragged. Clips surfaced of past interviews where he'd fawned over European stars with far less decorated careers than Salah. Users dug into his pattern of condescending behavior toward non-Western guests. A side-by-side video comparing Crane's fawning praise of a retired English midfielder with zero international success and his grilling of Salah went viral and not in his favor. Within 24 hours, HardTalk Tonight's official YouTube channel was flooded with dislikes and comments demanding an apology. Even sponsors began issuing carefully worded statements, distancing themselves from the tone and approach of the interview. Behind the scenes, executives were in full damage control mode, unsure whether to back their once golden host or begin drafting his quiet exit. But for Salah, there was no need for damage control. He didn't issue a follow-up post, no rant, no live video, just a single tweet the next morning. "When they question your worth, remember your journey. Walk with dignity, speak with purpose. Always. Mo Salah." It amassed 12 million likes within a day. The press begged for a follow-up interview. Talk shows extended offers. Late-night comedians made jokes about Crane getting megged on live TV. A few even coined the term salad to describe being completely dismantled in a debate without losing one's cool. Still, Salah remained quiet. He trained as usual, attended team meetings, flew to Liverpool's next fixture like nothing had changed, but something had. In the post-match press conference that week, a journalist dared to bring up the incident. "Mo, after that now famous interview, do you feel vindicated?" Salah smiled softly. It wasn't about vindication, it was about values, that's all. The room fell silent for a moment. Not out of awkwardness, but respect. Back on HardTalk Tonight, however, the fallout grew heavier by the day. Crane's next episode aired with noticeable edits, no live audience, and a carefully sanitized monologue about challenging guests and tough conversations. But no mention of Salah. The omission spoke volumes. The internet wasn't buying it. Petitions circulated calling for Crane's suspension. A long-time producer anonymously leaked internal memos showing that Salah's appearance had, in fact, been pitched weeks earlier as a chance to ruffle feathers and make headlines. The baiting had been deliberate. The final blow came a week later when one of Crane's former guests, a respected female author, released a short clip of an unaired segment where Crane had similarly mocked her accent and questioned her. legitimacy. The pattern was undeniable now. Dominic Crane took an indefinite leave of absence 3 days later. His seat, once the most feared in late-night television, now sat vacant, a monument to a man undone by his own arrogance. But the world had already moved on. Salah's moment had become more than viral drama. It became a cultural reset. A reminder that humility is not weakness, that composure under pressure is more powerful than rage, and that sometimes the loudest mic drop is silence. Football fans began referring to that night as the walk-off. Coaches used clips from the interview as leadership material, and for countless young dreamers around the world, especially those who'd ever been told they didn't belong, Salah's words echoed like a mantra. You don't get to define me. And so, a night designed to tear down a man's legacy became the very moment it was immortalized, not by trophies, not by stats, but by character.